So, The Phantom Menace turned 25 years old, and I've noticed the discourse about the movie has softened as younger generations grow up with the film, which makes sense. It is better to first see Jar Jar Binks before you've achieved object permanence. But I'll be honest, I've wanted to chat about it ever since I got some heat a while back for merely mentioning that upon release the prequels were not well received. But am I the only one who remembers that we didn't like the prequels? The criticism was that I shouldn't be speaking for where the fandom is, which I wasn't. I'm speaking for where the fandom was. I remember, look at the gray in my beard. I was there, Gandalf. I was there 3,000 spin-offs ago. It was a different time when overstocked Episode 1 figures lined store shelves like orphans. For just $1 a day, you can give Chancellor Valorum the vote of confidence he needs. And look, I respect that for younger fans, Phantom Menace might hold a special place on your dusty DVD shelf because you grew up with it. But that doesn't inherently prove its objective quality. We all have our favorite childhood movies, but you don't see me making videos defending the structural integrity of the Police Academy franchise. That's my other channel. So was it actually bad? Because sure, a lot of the hate for the movie partially came from fans who at the time were desperate for anything more substantive than re-releasing the OT in theaters now with new dewbacks. There was a lot of hype, a lot of toys, and Pepsi machines had a lot of Jake Lloyd. And for a lot of us, it was our first of many examples of movies failing to match the energy of the media campaign they were drenching us all in. Oh, don't worry, little Dave. You'll get used to it. But that's not the whole story. In my podcast, Off the Mark, where we wince through the worst reviews of the best movies ever made, quick plug, one recurring observation is that critics always feel the need to boil down the merit of a film to the time it was released. We found one review of John Carpenter's The Thing complaining that the alien didn't have the whimsical optimism of another extraterrestrial who debuted in the summer of '82, which isn't fair, because movies can be seen independently from the cultural context in which they were released, and valid criticism should judge a film internally. Also, that movie's not as optimistic as you think it is, since it scarred an entire generation of kids to never trust the government. So I'm not just going to sit here and say that The Phantom Menace sucked because it didn't meet our fanboy requirements of the late 90s. Because let's be honest, this is what we looked like in the 90s. Our judgment couldn't be trusted. Even when I was 15, I saw the film as desperately needing a second pair of eyes. Someone in there, in the process, to give Lucas the full Malcolm. You were so preoccupied of whether or not you could Jar Jar, you didn't stop to think if you should Jar Jar. And we know now how much of the original trilogy's beauty came from attrition, of freedom meeting technical limitation, high fantasy meeting tight editing, the incomprehensible dialogue meeting actors who knew the assignment. But The Phantom Menace progresses with the stubbornness of a kid playing in a sandbox who won't share any of his action figures because it's his birthday and he wants the taxation of trade routes to be in dispute. Lucas has come out and he has suggested that he always made these movies for 12-year-olds and that the prequel hate was just because fans grew up. Now, I'd like to offer my entire studio as evidence that's not true, but also I think there's a little bit of editing history going on here. The prequels did differ dramatically from the original trilogy, because for all the rules the original film trilogy broke, structurally it's familiar. If you went to college, it's the hero's journey. And if you went to college where you were antisocial, then it's specifically the Hidden Fortress. And that allowed the more fantastical concepts to at least be grounded for the audience. Phantom Menace, though, it has no main character, convoluted stakes, and actors visibly uncomfortable with this completely new filmmaking process. It was the first film where I noticed the plot was buckling under the excuses to get to the action. Think about the clear stakes of The Matrix, which just came out a couple of months earlier. We gotta save the guy kidnapped by the machines who run the world. Got it. Now compare that to, okay, to get off the planet, he's gotta win the dice roll for the boy's freedom. But only if he wins the race in the pod built by the boy but paid for by the other guy to get the money to buy the ship part that he needs, but if he fails, he loses the ship. This plot will do fine. No, it won't! And even the duel, which is widely considered the highlight of the film, lacks any emotional weight. Don't come at me like Obi-Wan. I mean the fight itself, not the aftermath. The duels in the OT had subtext and a build, But here, we don't even know who the guy is, who he's working for, or what he wants. All that we know is that he detailed his face like a muscle car. So look, I am and always have been really appreciative for the big swings that this movie takes, like the sets, the costumes, the character design. And in recent years, I've heard interviews where people associated with the film admit that from day one, Lucas wasn't interested in making the movie that the fans wanted. And against all the hype, he told the story he wanted to tell, which I completely respect. But just as outside factors like audience expectation aren't a reason to hate a movie, I think that outside factors like a confident creator are equally not a reason to love a movie. Finally, it's a misconception to say that we were mad because The Phantom Menace wasn't the movie that we wanted it to be. Fandom was different in the 90s. We weren't that demanding. We couldn't be. We had dial-up. We didn't have everything mapped out in our heads. We were just excited to see another chapter of the Star Wars, and this didn't feel like it. It felt like a fever dream from someone scared of true collaboration, which, yes, compared to the sterile modern product, does have some retroactive sentimental charm. But just like Darth Maul, the movie fell apart. And it's a bit of a stretch to convince me that it actually held itself together.